I want to tell you something before I say anything else. I have never paid an electricity bill. Not once. Not ever. And the reason I have never paid one is not because I am living in the dark eating cold food by candlelight. I am sitting here right now with lights running, a fan going, a refrigerator humming, and a battery bank that my solar panels filled up for free this morning, the same way they have filled it up every morning for years. I am going to show you how to build the same basic system for about $200. No electrician, no permit, no complicated wiring that requires a professional to figure out. I built my first small system myself, and I am going to walk you through it the same way I would walk my own son through it. Step by step, plain English, nothing left out. But first I want to tell you something that should make you a little bit angry, because I think you deserve to know it. The electrical utility industry in this country has known for a long time that a small, simple solar setup can cover a meaningful portion of a normal household's daily electricity use. They have known it since before most of us were born. And yet, if you call your utility company today and ask them how to reduce your bill with a simple DIY solar setup, they will transfer you to a department that tries to sell you a grid tie system that costs $20,000 and requires a licensed electrician, a county permit, and an interconnection agreement that keeps you tied to their infrastructure permanently. That is not an accident. That is a business model. The permits, the rules, the way solar gets talked about in the media, the way every solar advertisement you have ever seen shows a professional crew on a roof with expensive equipment. All of it has kept most people thinking that solar is complicated and expensive and something you need professionals to handle. Because a person who builds their own power system and covers their own electricity needs is a person who stops paying a monthly bill. And a person who stops paying a monthly bill is not their customer anymore. They have known the simple version works. They just needed you not to know it. The truth is, the basic solar system is 3 components. 3. A panel, a charge controller, and a battery. That is it. Everything else is just adding more of those same things at bigger scale. Once you understand how 3 components connect together, you understand how any solar system on Earth works because it is all the same idea made larger. I figured this out not because I am clever, but because I needed power, and I needed to make it myself, and I learned how. Now I am going to share that with you. Let me start by explaining what each of the 3 components actually does, because understanding what they do is what makes the connections make sense. The solar panel is the part that catches sunlight and turns it into electricity. Sunlight hits the silicon cells in the panel and knocks electrons loose, and those moving electrons are electricity. That is genuinely the whole process. No moving parts, no fuel, no combustion, just light hitting silicon and electricity coming out the other side. The panel has 2 wires coming out of it, a positive and a negative, and it produces direct current, which is the same type of electricity that a battery stores. Now here is the problem with connecting the panel directly to the battery. The panel produces a variable amount of electricity depending on how much sun is hitting it. Full bright sun produces more, clouds produce less, morning and evening produce less than midday. That variable output coming directly into the battery would damage the battery over time, because batteries need to receive electricity at a controlled voltage, not a fluctuating one. This is where the charge controller comes in. The charge controller sits between the panel and the battery. Its job is to take whatever the panel is producing, which varies all day long, and convert it into a steady controlled voltage that is exactly what the battery needs to charge properly without getting damaged. Think of it like a regulator. The panel produces wild, variable power. The charge controller tames it. The battery receives clean, steady charging current. Without the charge controller, the panel would cook the battery in a season. With it, the battery lasts for years. That is the whole system. Panel makes electricity, controller tames it, battery stores it. 3 components, 3 connections. Done. Now when you want to actually use that stored electricity to run your lights and your fan and your phone charger, you need one more piece, an inverter. The battery stores direct current at 12 volts. Your household device is run on alternating current at 120 volts. The inverter sits on the output side of the battery and converts the 12-volt DC into 120-volt AC. Plug your devices into the inverter the same way you would plug them into a wall outlet, and they run exactly the same way. So the complete system is 4 components: panel, controller, battery, inverter. 4 things. That is every solar system on Earth, at any scale. You add more panels and bigger batteries to make it larger, but the four components and the way they connect never change. Now let me tell you exactly what to buy and what it costs, because I want to be specific. The solar panel. For a starter system, buy a 100-watt monocrystalline panel. Monocrystalline is the type with the dark black cells. It is more efficient per square foot than the blue speckled polycrystalline type. For a small system on a budget, monocrystalline is what you want. A 100-watt panel runs between $40 and $60 new. You can find them used for $20 to $30, and a used solar panel works exactly as well as a new one, because there are no moving parts to wear out. The cells degrade about 0.5% per year, so a 5-year-old panel is still producing at 97.5% of its original output. Buy used if you can find them, and save the money. The charge controller. For a 100-watt panel, you need at minimum a 10-amp controller, and a 20-amp controller gives you room to add a second panel later without replacing the controller. There are two main types, PWM and MPPT. PWM is simpler and cheaper. MPPT is more efficient, but costs 3 to 4 times as much. For a small starter system, the extra efficiency of MPPT does not pay back the extra cost for several years. Buy the PWM. It costs $10 to $20, and it does everything you need. The battery. This is the most important purchasing decision in the system, because the battery is what you are actually running your devices off of. The panel charges the battery during the day, and you use the battery day and night. You want a deep cycle battery, not a car battery. A car battery is designed to deliver a huge burst of current for 2 or 3 seconds to start an engine, and then immediately get recharged by the alternator. It is not designed to discharge slowly over hours, and it degrades quickly if you use it that way. A deep cycle battery is specifically designed for exactly that use. Slow, steady discharge over many hours, and slow, steady recharging. That is the solar use pattern perfectly. Within deep cycle batteries, the type I recommend for a home installation is AGM. AGM stands for Absorbed Glass Mat, which means the battery acid is absorbed into glass fiber mats inside the battery, instead of sloshing around as liquid. This means the battery is completely sealed, cannot spill, produces minimal off-gassing, requires zero maintenance, and can be used indoors or in a garage or utility closet without concerns. A 100 amp-hour 12-volt AGM deep cycle battery costs between $70 and $100. That is the size I recommend for a starter system. The inverter. You want a pure sine wave inverter, not a modified sine wave inverter. Modified sine wave inverters are cheaper, but they produce choppy electricity that can damage sensitive electronics, make motors run hot and wear out faster, cause some devices to buzz or behave strangely, and in some cases refuse to run certain loads at all. Pure sine wave inverters produce smooth electricity, identical to what comes out of your wall outlet. Every device that runs on grid power will run perfectly on a pure sine wave inverter. A 300-watt pure sine wave inverter runs between $20 and $40. Buy pure sine wave. The few extra dollars are worth it every single time. Total cost: panel $40 to $60, controller $10 to $20, battery $70 to $100, inverter $20 to $40. Total $140 to $220. Call it $200 for an honest round number that covers a quality build with a little room for wiring and connectors. Now let me walk you through the connections, because this is where people stop, even though it is the simplest part. There are only 3 connections in the basic system, and they go in a specific order that I want you to follow exactly. First connection: panel to charge controller. The panel has 2 leads coming out of it, a positive wire and a negative wire. They usually have MC4 connectors on the ends, which are the waterproof locking connectors you see on all solar equipment. They are designed so the positive connector only plugs into the positive port, and the negative connector only plugs into the negative port. You cannot cross them accidentally because the connectors are shaped differently. This was a very thoughtful design decision. You just plug positive to positive and negative to negative on the solar panel port of the charge controller, and that connection is done. Second connection: battery to charge controller. Your charge controller has a port labeled with a little battery symbol. That is where the battery connects. Most charge controllers use screw terminal connections for the battery wires, rather than MC4 connectors. So you strip the end of the wire, push it into the terminal, and tighten the screw. Positive wire from the battery positive terminal to the positive battery port on the controller. Negative wire from the battery negative terminal to the negative battery port on the controller. Before you make this connection, I want you to do one thing first. Put a fuse on the positive wire between the battery and everything else. This is the safety system of your entire installation. If a wire gets damaged or a short circuit happens somewhere in the system, the fuse blows instead of the wire getting hot and potentially starting a fire. For the connection between the battery and the charge controller, use a 30 amp inline fuse placed within 18 inches of the battery terminal. This costs about $2, and it is not optional. Put the fuse in. Third connection, battery to inverter. The inverter connects directly to the battery, not to the charge controller. Positive to positive, negative to negative. This connection needs heavier wire than the panel connections because the inverter can draw significant current when running loads. Use at minimum 10 gauge wire for the battery to inverter connection, and prefer 8 gauge if you are running anything close to the inverter's rated wattage. Put a 40 amp fuse on the positive wire of this connection, again within 18 inches of the battery terminal. That is all 3 connections: panel to controller, battery to controller, battery to inverter. You now have a working solar power system. When sunlight hits the panel, the controller display will light up and show you the charging current flowing into the battery. When you plug a device into the inverter and switch the inverter on, the device will run. There is nothing more to configure, no app to set up, no utility company to call, no professional to wait for. The physics handles all of it automatically. Now I want to talk about what this system actually produces in real life, because I want to give you an honest picture, not an optimistic one. A 100-watt panel in full bright direct sunlight produces 100 watts. That is its maximum. In partial sun, it produces less. On a cloudy day, it might produce 20 to 40 watts. In the morning and evening, when the sun is at a low angle, it produces less than at midday. Across a full day with a mix of conditions, a 100-watt panel in most parts of the country produces on average between 300 and 500 watt-hours of energy. Call it 400 watt-hours on a typical day. Your 100 amp-hour 12-volt battery stores 1200 watt-hours of energy total. But here is an important thing to know. Deep cycle batteries last much longer if you do not discharge them below 50% of their capacity. Running a battery flat regularly shortens its life from 6 or 8 years down to 2 or 3. So treat your usable battery capacity as 600 watt-hours, not 1200. On a good sunny day, your panel adds 400 watt-hours, and you have 600 watt-hours available. That is your daily energy budget. What does 600 watt-hours run? 5 LED light bulbs at 10 watts each, running 6 hours, is 300 watt-hours. Charging 4 phones is about 40 watt-hours. Running a laptop for 4 hours is about 200 watt-hours. Running a small fan for 8 hours is about 80 watt-hours. That is already 620 watt-hours, and you can see that a 100-watt system covers a meaningful daily load of real useful devices. Not your whole house, but your lights, your devices, your communications, your fan. The part of your bill that is not heating and cooling, which in most households is 30 to 50% of the total. Now I want to talk about something that I think is more powerful than any hardware upgrade you can make to this system, and that is deciding what you actually need electricity for before you go spending money producing more of it. This is something the Amish communities I have studied for years understand at a level most people never reach, not because they are exceptional, but because they had no alternative. When you produce your own power from the beginning, you think about consumption completely differently. You do not waste what costs you something to make, and that mindset alone is worth more than any panel upgrade. Load reduction is worth more per dollar spent than any improvement to your generation equipment. Switching every incandescent bulb in your home to LED costs $30 and reduces your lighting electricity use by 75% overnight. That $30 does more for your bill than any single piece of solar equipment you could buy. Air drying your clothes instead of running the electric dryer eliminates 3 to 5 kilowatt hours of load every laundry day. Using a fan instead of air conditioning in the mild months eliminates the single largest load in your entire house. When you combine genuine load reduction with a small solar system, you can eliminate a remarkable percentage of your electricity bill with a very modest total investment. The utility industry does not want you thinking this way. An energy-conscious household that has cut its consumption in half and covered half of what remains with a small solar system is paying 25% of the bill it used to pay. That is a customer who has largely escaped from dependency. Multiply that by millions of households, and you understand why nobody at the utility company has ever called you up to explain load reduction and basic solar. The Amish did not need anyone to explain it to them, because they built their systems from scratch, and every watt they wasted was a watt they had to go back and produce. That accountability changed everything about how they relate to energy. It will change how you relate to it too. I have been putting everything I have learned about cutting your energy costs and taking back control of your home into written form because I want it to exist somewhere more permanent than a video platform. The book I put together under the Gaia Lost Vault name goes deeper than anything I can cover in a video. It walks you through building more advanced off-grid power setups, reducing your household energy load faster than you thought possible, and practical systems for growing your own food and medicine so that the money you save on your electricity bill is money you keep instead of money that just moves to a different bill. If what I showed you today changed how you think about your power bill, the book is where the complete picture lives. One investment that pays you back every single month for the rest of the time you own your home. You will find it at the Gaia Lost Vault channel store. Let me finish with the maintenance picture because I want you to know exactly what you are signing up for long term. The solar panel requires essentially no maintenance. Wipe the surface with a damp cloth when it gets dusty. That is genuinely it. There are no moving parts, nothing to oil or adjust or replace. The cells will produce power for 30 years. The charge controller runs without attention. Keep it dry and ventilated and it will run for a decade or more. If it ever fails, a replacement costs $15 and takes 10 minutes to swap out. The battery benefits most from your attention. The main thing is, do not discharge it below 50% regularly. A cheap battery voltage monitor costs $5 and gives you a real-time reading, so you always know your state of charge. Keep the battery terminals clean and tight, and the battery will last 6 to 8 years. At that point, you buy a new one for $80, and the system keeps running. The inverter runs without maintenance. If it ever fails, a replacement costs $25. Total maintenance cost over 20 years. 2 battery replacements at $80 each, and 1 inverter replacement at $25. That is $185 in maintenance over 2 decades to keep a system running that saves you $40 to $70 every single month. Here's what I want you to do this week. Write down every electrical device you use regularly and look up how many watts it draws. Add up the watt hours you use in a typical day for your lighting and electronics. Everything that is not your water heater, your AC, or your stove. That is your solar target. That is what a $200 system can chase down and eliminate from your bill. Then order the 4 components. Mount the panel in the sunniest spot you have. Make the 3 connections in order. Fuse every connection. Plug something in and run it off sunlight. The sun has been rising over your roof every morning for as long as you have lived in that house. The energy it delivers every day is the same whether you capture it or not. The only thing that changes is whether it fills your battery or just heats up your shingles. Let me tell you one more thing before I close, and it is about something I see people get wrong more than almost anything else when they start building their first solar system. They focus entirely on the generation side, how many panels, how many watts, how much sun, and they completely ignore the consumption side. And the consumption side is where the real money is. Let me give you a real example so this lands properly. The average American household uses about 30 kilowatt hours of electricity per day. That sounds like a lot, and it is. To replace 30 kilowatt hours per day with solar panels, you would need a system that costs several $1,000s. That is the version the solar industry wants to sell you. The full replacement. The whole house. The $20,000 roof installation. But when you actually break down where those 30 kilowatt hours go, typically between 15 and 20 of them are going to heating and cooling. Your central air conditioner, your electric water heater, your electric dryer. Those are the loads that make the number look scary. The remaining 10 to 15 kilowatt hours is everything else. And inside that everything else category, 3 to 5 kilowatt hours is often wasted on devices that are in standby mode, drawing power while you are not even using them. Your television drawing power while it is off. Your microwave display running all day. Your gaming console sitting in rest mode, consuming electricity around the clock. Unplug the things you are not using. Switch to LED everywhere you have not already. Stop running the dryer for loads you can air dry. Do those 3 things before you spend a single dollar on solar equipment and watch what happens to your bill. Then, once you have trimmed the waste, the $200 solar system covers a much larger percentage of what remains. This is the thing I want to leave you with, because it is the thing that changed how I think about energy entirely. The goal is not to produce more. The goal is to need less and produce the rest yourself. Those 2 things together are what actually close the gap between what the utility company charges you and what you pay. Chasing production alone, without addressing consumption, is like trying to fill a bucket that has holes in the bottom. You can keep pouring, but you will never get ahead. The Amish communities I have researched for this channel understood this not as a philosophy, but as a practical reality. When you produce your own power, you think very carefully about what you use it for. You do not leave lights on in empty rooms. You do not run appliances for convenience when a small amount of effort would accomplish the same thing without electricity. You are aware of your energy budget, the same way you are aware of your food budget or your money budget, because you know exactly what it costs to build and maintain the system that produces it. That awareness is something you can develop even before you build a single solar panel. Start tracking your electricity use this week. Read your meter at the same time every morning for 7 days, and write down the number. At the end of the week, you will know exactly how many kilowatt hours you are using per day. Most people have never done this, and the number surprises them every single time. Once you know the number, you can start making decisions about it. And once you start making decisions about it, the bill starts moving in the right direction before you have spent anything at all. The $200 system is the next step after awareness. But awareness is free, and it is where everything that follows begins.